Hi, my name's Danny. I was a Sabb from 2021 to 2022. I was head of student engagement, and I now am a creative campaigns producer for a company called Opera Up Close, based at Mars Studios.
And my name is Catherine. I was a Sabbatical Officer from 22 to 23, and I was the next head of student engagement. These days, I'm a social media manager, freelancer, and I run a theatre company.
What motivated you to run for the position of Sabbatical Officer?
I think mainly the work that you'd started in your
Nice,
year. You're welcome. So, like seeing how much you achieved in that year, and the possibilities that had been created out of that work, it sort of gave me a lot of inspiration. Going, all of this is fantastic. I know exactly where I can take it now. So yeah, what about you?
Well, so I was a Sabbatical Officer coming out of COVID, and I'd been heavily involved in societies before then, and I was annoyed that there was this, for me, untapped potential of what societies could do. I had done a lot of work in student radio and seen how big societies were in other unis. And was like, there's literally no reason why it couldn't happen here. So
you ran Radio Sonar, didn't you?
Yeah, so I ran the student radio station and was also a student trustee before I became a Sabbatical Officer. And yeah, my whole campaign was just trying to make students care more, whether that was for societies or just like being proud of being at the university. But it was difficult coming out of COVID to make that happen.
Oh, yeah. Can you remember what any of your manifesto points were?
I actually thought about this in the build up to this video.
Yeah.
Because it was an online election, I had to get quite creative for my election. And I did a lot of song parodies. I did manifesto song parodies, which were quite infamous amongst my friends at the time. I did like an Office parody. I did a Sandman parody. I did a Muppets parody. But all of them were basically just saying the same thing about like wanting to get engagement up. And it was just like different uses of the same words to try and get engagement up. I don't think I had anything crazy. You'll know that like the head of student engagement role at the time was just like very broad.
It's a bit of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, just like anything that people might engage with.
Yeah.
So mine were all similar around those areas. What about you?
I remember one being sort of like multi-use sort of function space. I remember going to a couple of other unis when I was a student, and they had these sort of these big halls, these big rooms that could be used for like live music, could be used for theatre performances or society meetings or AGMs and stuff. And then coming back, I noticed the absence of that. So I wanted to sort of look into getting that secured.
What skills did you gain during your time as a Sabb, and what was the most useful skill that you learned?
Risk assessments have served me better than I thought they ever would. The number of risk assessments I've had to do since is astronomical. The skill of data collection, and that sounds really sort of like whizzy and techie, but it's not. During my time as a Sabb, we had a lot of different ways of surveying how the students were engaging with us, sort of finding out what they wanted, whether or not we were actually sort of honouring what they needed. And a lot of that ended up being quite creative in its methods. We had paper surveys, we had polls on Instagram, we opened the SU exchange at some point, and that sort of served as a bit of a hub for students as well. And that was a really good way of sort of like tracking engagement and students like need and reliance on the SU. So I definitely say sort of my skills in data collection grew as a result of this role. What about you?
I think probably was like something to do with sort of like leadership and like working within a team. I think when I came into the Sabbatical Officer role, I had experience being a leader, but I didn't quite have any sort of reliance on needing like the responsibility in the same way. Like being a Sabbatical Officer, you're obviously director of a company, of a charity, and you're a trustee and all those type of things, as well as like your face is everywhere, and you're like a vital member of like the output of what the Students Union is doing. And whilst I think I came into the role with a fairly decent understanding of myself and my ways to achieve that, I think I learned a lot that I probably didn't realize at the time, but like now, 2-3 years on, I'm like, okay, actually, there's definitely some origins where I have my skill sets today that I gained from being a sabbatical officer.
It sets you up really well, pretty much, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
like
I also think that, like, I mean, I know I benefited at the time because a lot of the core team at that time period were former sabbatical officers.
Yeah.
So, like, Josh, who's now CEO, and Phil, who's moved on, like, they were really good for me to just kind of learn just general skills and, like, ways to approach things. I definitely would credit them in not letting me go off the wire, because I think I probably would have gone off the wire a couple of times because I was so, like, relaxed and...
We had a really broad job role.
I'd say so. They definitely helped me be more professional, would be my polite analysis for the camera.
Top of the clops.
Yeah.
How did your experience shape your professional career path? What are you doing now?
Well, I guess it helped me in the sense of, like, I now work in marketing, and as a sabbatical officer with a focus of student engagement, sort of everything that we were doing in our roles was to try and make people care, which is very similar to sort of marketing worlds. And I think when I took over, I felt that there could be improvements in the Students Union social media, and after some attempts at convincing them to make that happen, we managed to get there, and myself with the marketing team at the time, I think we managed to make some really nice pieces of content that helped persuade the students. And, you know, that it sounds kind of maybe harsh on the students at the time, but, like, trying to make people who didn't care was a really difficult challenge. And it was a really key part of my time as a sabbatical officer, because the bar was so low in terms of engagement, and the fact that we managed to get it up was, like, an amazing feat. And that's been really useful for my latter career, because I know that, like, I have the skill set with teams around me that can make that type of stuff happen. What about you? How did your experience shape your career path?
Kind of the same thing. So I've like transitioned into marketing, and then obviously with the theatre company, engagement is like the lifeblood of everything that we do. I'd say being able to know where we're falling short. I think having the objectivity, when we were sabbatical officers, the NSS still had neither agree nor disagree in their surveys. And with SUs, question 26 in the NSS is really vital, because it's the only one that sort of questions unions. And so having that ambivalence, that was our biggest percentage of answer back when that was an option. And sort of from that, I've kind of learned you never want to target the people who have already made up their mind that they don't like you, or the people who've already made up their mind that they do. You want to target the people who are on the fence and see if you can just...
So picking your battles, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's definitely a good part of being a sabbatical officer. Yeah.
Definitely helped me. Have employers ever commented on your time as a Sabb?
Yes. Yes, they have. So, most of them don't know what a Sabb is.
Fully.
Yeah, so I think also where, like, I've sort of flicked between working in radio, working in theatre, marketing's always kind of been linked between the two. Most of them, I don't think, have really understood what a sabbatical officer is about, but when you sort of explain to them the responsibilities, the experience that you get, that's when they become more impressed, because, you know, to be sort of 20, 21, or however old you would be as a sabbatical officer, and have had the experience of being a director and a trustee, like, that's something that a large proportion of students just don't have. And I think as I've got further into my career, that stuff's been stuff that employers have, like, reflected on better. Whereas, like, immediately coming out of and going for entry level stuff, they were less focused on that.
Yeah, it's more. I've found that more sort of like coordinator and up level jobs have been more focused on that kind of stuff, because it's the leadership element.
Yeah, I think so.
In what ways did being a Sabb challenge you personally?
I think for me, being a Sabb challenged me because of sort of the stuff I said earlier. I'm not sure I was ready to be as professional as I needed to be. I don't think I was ever, like, unprofessional, but I think where it still kind of felt like a student role, and where I think maybe I knew that the bar was kind of low coming into it. I definitely, on reflection, could have tried way harder over the course of the role and handled a lot of things better, whether that was, like, relationships internally or externally. Like, I was definitely the most relaxed Sabb, because I knew that my focus was improving interest in societies and events. And if we managed to get like it slightly up, that was a massive win, and that would have been a bigger win than I had seen in my time as a student. So
Yeah. Do you ever get called the fun Sabb? Because I got called the fun Sabb quite a bit.
no, actually,
No?
which I'm slightly offended by.
Oh.
But
It was like on balance when everyone else had their focuses like education and welfare, and then we would just engage.
I think for me though, because I don't know how much you pay attention to that stuff, but like I came in and I was very adamant off the bat that I had no interest in everything else that the other Sabbs were doing.
Yeah.
I was so locked into like, this is what I want my focus to be.
Yeah.
You can try and make me go to... Notoriously, they tried to make me go to NUS events numerous times, or like conferences or whatever to help me. And I was like, I'm not interested. I will not be going. You can send other people.
Yeah.
And that it was like that type of thing. So, again, I think that's maybe where, on reflection, I probably should have been more responsive to those things. But no, I never got called the fun Sabb.
Oh.
Which is slightly devastating for my ego, but we'll push past it.
I mean, I don't think it was very much a personal thing. I think it was just more in response
the fun
to
role.
Yeah, we got to do
true.
events and show up and smile.
How did it challenge you?
I'd say transitionally, sort of getting, we had lots of meetings with upper management and the vice chancellor's group, and it's a very strange place to be sitting as someone who's either freshly graduated or just taking a year out of study. We both graduated before we started, didn't we? And so, yeah, it's sort of having that mindset shift, not only within yourself, but sort of being able to find the people who'd also shifted in their mindset.
Mm.
So, I mean, there are sort of like umpteen members of staff who knew me as a student. And so coming into these important meetings and sort of hoping that they'll see me a little bit differently.
The relationship change is different.
In a position of responsibility. I'd say that was kind of challenging. I always felt like I needed to prove that I should be there and contribute. I think it was during that year that I made the sort of pact with myself that in every meeting I would try and ask at least one question or contribute at least once.
Do you think that's something that you've continued doing since?
Oh, 100%.
Sure.
I go to a lot of sort of like conferences or networking meetings with the theatre company, and I keep it in the back of my head of sort of like at some point in this hour-long seminar or something, I'm going to stick my hand up and ask a question. Whenever there's a Q&A, I love a Q&A. Can't go wrong with a Q&A. Yeah, what did you learn about yourself during your time in office?
I think in the immediate aftermath of being a Sabb, I wasn't positive how much I had learned. But I think, again, like reflecting years later, I think I definitely learned a lot more than I thought I did.
Yeah, same.
I think one of the most sort of eye-opening experiences for me as being a Sabb was did you do 360 reviews as a Sabb?
No, I don't think.
So we did 360 reviews as a Sabb, which is basically where like the wider team anonymously give you feedback on
Oh no, we didn't do that
type of thing. And I found it really fascinating because like I've always known myself to be quite a big personality and quite a vocal person, but I don't think I had necessarily realised until that 360 review came back how much my personality or like mood could influence like the office dynamic, and where I was sort of shifting in and out of my own personal journey of determining like whether that doing the Sabb was the right thing for me for the whole year. There were probably periods where maybe I was impacting the office dynamic more than I necessarily realised, which is obviously not the best. And I know that now, but I didn't realise at the time maybe how much I'd been doing it until I'd done those 360 reviews. So I think one of the biggest things I learned about myself was like, as someone that I can only assume end up being a fairly big, loud person for the rest of my life, how the importance of paying attention to how much that can impact on all levels, because on a micro level, I definitely did not realise at that time how much it could influence things to the extent that it could do. What about you?
I'd say I learned I was far angrier than I thought I was.
Sure.
I definitely found that I was more of an angry girl than I thought I ever was. But sort of through the year that I was a Sabb, I sort of started to learn how I can channel that into other things and sort of like, student advocacy. And in my year, we started the SU exchange, and a lot of the time I sort of found myself approaching it as a sort of like, oh, this is stupid. Why wouldn't they do that? It's so easy to just sort of, give us the space. And it's so easy to get something pat tested, which I stand by. Yeah, I found that I'm far more of an advocate than I ever thought I was.
I think me and you, from my understanding anyway, came from very similar positions. Like we had both been frustrated. We both ran societies, and we were both frustrated that like more stuff wasn't happening for us and our wider groups. And I think we probably both came in with a similar thing of like, there's so many obvious things that we should be doing. Like this is so annoying. And then it was not until you start the role that you're like,
understand why a lot of those things can't happen. Yeah,
red tape.
Yeah,
is
and they were big societies that we ran as well. So I don't know if you found this with Radio Sonar, but it was sort of, the society became very self-sufficient and only ever went to the SU if something was wrong.
Yes, that's true.
But yeah, I'd say we managed to shift that in our years.
I hope so.
I think.
Well, I think one of the lessons I also learned was, I guess, which comes on nicely to the next topic in terms of legacy, is like just by the sheer nature of student volunteering is that it will always ebb and flow.
Yeah.
No matter how much you put into it, how much heart and soul you put into something, that like you could have an amazing 5 years in the student volunteering, or like a society could, or like a student union could. But all it takes is 1 or 2 years of people that just aren't as passionate in the same way, or don't know that they can be passionate in the same way, for things to really change so drastically.
Yeah.
And then within that short time period, the Students' Union or a society, whatever, can be vastly, vastly different.
Yeah.
And I think...
But you get those review years, I suppose.
Yeah.
With the EBS, you get the chance to sort of figure out, okay, what worked? Why did it work back then? So like the things that worked pre-COVID wouldn't have worked in lockdown, obviously. And then the things that worked in lockdown definitely wouldn't work afterwards.
I think, because, I think legacy is a really interesting thing in terms of being a sabbatical officer, because one of the reasons I ran was because I was annoyed, right? And I wanted to make a difference, because I wanted to show that actually if more people cared, more stuff could happen. And as you said, like, part of the reason you ran was because you felt that you could continue the stuff I was doing. But like, if someone had ran in my position that maybe wasn't as passionate in the same areas and hadn't sort of connected with you, the few years of stuff that's happened would be completely different.
Yeah.
And that's so fascinating to me in terms of just the dynamic of student volunteering.
Totally. I think because I was still running Solent Stage when you were a sabbatical officer.
Yes.
And
did you come to my society boot camps?
I think I did. I think I must have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a veiled attempt at trying to make the training day sound more exciting.
No, it was the photos that they went out and took of you in the park. They cracked me up. But yeah, it was sort of managing Solent Stage, and by then it had been my 3rd year of managing it. And I'd gone from before lockdown through lockdown, and then I'd come out the other end. And I sort of, to begin with, I felt like I was still banging my head against the same brick wall. And then over the course of that year, I was sort of, okay, things are actually capable of changing and sort of evolving, and there is actually far more that we could be doing. I remember the Solent scheme that I kind of, in my 3rd year of running Solent Stage, I used it as a kind of paint by numbers.
Yeah.
I remember sitting down with Erica Sankovic, the president of LES, sat down in a bar checking off every single thing that we'd done on the Solent scheme.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the Solent scheme.
I liked it as well.
It definitely, we rejigged it when I took over because it was not getting much response. I think it needed to become something like that.
Yeah.
To get people interested. I think a lot of things that people get put off by for student volunteering is kind of just like the barrier to the unknown. Like people think it's harder than it is, or they don't realise deep down that they have the potential to be a leader or anything like that. And it's like very much like a confidence thing. I think my confidence wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for student volunteering.
Oh yeah, fully.
And I think a lot of people I know who have had big parts of their lives be student volunteering are probably also like the most confident people I know, because they've learned the same lessons that we're talking about in terms of leadership, managing people, like coordinating, all that type of thing. So, you know, I'll always be grateful for student volunteering and then in turn becoming a Sabb.
Yeah. Does it ever like frustrate you having had that experience so young and then going into the professional world and sort of you're around people who are the same age as you but didn't have that experience, and it's almost like you can't relax that much? It's sort of sitting there knowing that you could make a difference, and people your age don't seem to have that same impetus, that same drive.
Yes, it has frustrated me on numerous occasions.
Cool.
Because
glad I'm not the only one.
I think one of the cons of being a Sabb or any student volunteering leader is that it gives you so many amazing opportunities and experience that it's difficult coming out of that to going from like someone of vast importance to making stuff happen to, unless you're just lucky with what you do afterwards, not being that important at the same level.
Being able to see the difference that you make. Yeah. Like knowing that if you weren't there, the contribution would be different.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, just from my own interactions with people over the years from various students' unions, a lot of sabbatical officers I think struggle with the same thing because they have this amazing year where they make so many amazing opportunities and they meet so many amazing people, and then they go back to being a cog in the system, and there's, you know, it's an adjustment period, but down the line, at least I felt, as I've said, like 2-3 years later, I'm like, okay, that was amazing. Even if for like 6 months afterwards, I was like, why did I do that to myself?
Yeah. Fully. I think it's helped with like freelancing and stuff.
Sure.
I suppose. So that's sort of another thing that I can manage.
Sure. Is there a particular project or campaign you're proud to have contributed to?
Definitely the SU Exchange. So the SU Exchange opened as a community pantry in response to sort of students being disproportionately affected by the cost of living. We had seen a couple of other SUs do a similar thing, and obviously there's the Trussell Trust, which is the like national non-profit that looks after food banks, and we were sort of looking at how we could do the same thing here because we knew that we needed it. The way that we did it was we had a sort of a small membership fee of, I think it was a $5 for the entire academic year. And we were like insanely precious about the language that we used around it. So unfortunately, at the moment, there's still sort of, you know, stigma around using a food bank. So switching the terminology to sort of community pantry, community hub, it sounds like a very little change, but it means the world if you're reading it from a, you know, branding, marketing perspective. And having the membership fee, it sort of took away from the reluctance of feeling like you're taking something from somewhere without contributing positively to it, because that can be a barrier for a lot of people as well. So yeah, and it was fantastic. I think we opened in November 2022. I think by July, so the end of that academic year, we had 500 members joined, and we distributed about 19,000 items, and they could come in and take 5 items a day.
That's a big impact.
Yeah, and it you know, it appeared on the news, and we used that space as kind of a secondary way into the student body. So we had our student life survey that went out of there when we had paper surveys for it. We had Steffi, the education Sabb, we had her Go With The Flow campaign run from there. And it kind of provided a second platform for students to access union services, because it can be daunting walking into an office and sort of saying that you need something, but walking into a shop setting, it's a bit easier. So yeah, definitely the exchange. What about you?
And my biggest projects and campaigns feel quite minute in the scale of your one now. You've said that, because mine were all like events and party based. When I was a student, there wasn't really events from the Students' Union, and I'm really happy that over the course of my year as a Sabb, we managed to work to secure budget and work to do events to make stuff like the Winter Ball and like really, and also to upscale the Union Awards.
Yeah.
The Winter Ball was really difficult to make happen. Students had not come to the Student Union events. There was a big hesitation from trustee board to give us the funding to make it happen. And I was convinced I had made an impact on first years through freshers and all that type of stuff, that I would be able to get people there to sell it out.
And you did. It sold out, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we did sell it out. And actually we were going to increase the amount of tickets, but then one of the COVID variants appeared and they wouldn't let us.
Yeah.
But I think for me, knowing that like that event still continues is will like always be my most inevitable legacy piece from being a Sabb. Similarly with like upscaling the Union Awards, and similar I guess what you said about me, but like there's just like a respect to the legacy thing I think that you want to try to achieve as a Sabb. Is like, if there's something that with people are passionate about and you maybe feel like you can help, being able to do that is a great thing as well. So I guess for me, like the projects and campaigns is the increasing events and selling out stuff like the Winter Ball and introducing those things, but it's also about continuing the legacy of the work of previous people.
100%. It's crazy that you said sort of like the achievements sort of seem small in comparison to the SU exchange, but in my mind, I don't think the SU exchange would have happened if the engagement wasn't there.
Sure.
So
we managed to, there are so many students at the university. I think I felt like I definitely got lucky that I, in the course of the Freshers Week period, had connected with enough small groups that believed in what I did enough to then keep coming to events because they trusted me, and they would also then help me promote stuff in a return. It easily could have been a scenario where I did not meet those people and then was struggling to sell things in the same way. I guess it shows how important as a Sabb it is to like talk to students and get those connections. But like I remember, some of my favourite memories from being a Sabbatical Officer are from those events. I remember we did I think it was a Mamma Mia sing-along.
Cinema in the Spark,
in the Spark. And I'd become friends with a group of first years at the time that brought all their friends, and we did like a conga around the Spark. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is so surreal that like this is somewhere that I've like given 5 years of my life to as like a student, and then now as like a Sabbatical Officer. And within their first like week, 2 weeks, or however long it was, into being a student, they've done a conga around the Spark and had those memories that maybe they'll keep being engaged and as a result.
It was post-COVID as well.
Yeah,
I don't think it was sort of fluke based that people came out of COVID needing to engage with other people and needing that sort of guidance from the SU. I think they were just fortunate that they had somebody in the role who actually wanted that too. So, do
you feel like you have big accomplishments from being a Sabb that you boast about or could boast about?
Again, just the exchange. I did loads of other stuff, I promise. Yeah, that's the sort of, in terms of numbers, in terms of vitality, in terms of sort of how important it was to the student body and sort of how we managed to meet their principal needs and how effectively we did it. It's the biggest thing that I'll shout about. And yeah, just sort of having the opportunity to continue boosting engagement. We had the second Winter Ball, and then our Union Awards was in Rev de Cuba. But yeah, I'd say that the biggest accomplishment was being a Sabb, I suppose.
Sure.
Looking back when I got to the end of the year and sort of compare, I don't know if you were doing the same, but some of the staff members had me keep a month-on-month journal of all the stuff that I'd done. No?
That's possibly because I never gave myself the credit at any point, because I don't know if you remember, but I actually left early as a Sabb. I didn't complete my full year.
It was like May-ish?
Yeah, because I was at a point where I think I was in a place where I was doing a lot of other volunteering outside of it, and I just had burnt out, and I don't think I had given myself the time to appreciate the amount we had achieved as a students' union in that time period, and I just wanted to sort of clean break from it. So, you know, I think it's good. I'm glad that they did that, because I think I definitely would have appreciated that at the time.
Nice. What about you? What big accomplishments?
I think selling out like a first students' union event in like 10 years, comfortable boast. Is something that I'm very proud of. The most infamous story from my friendship group is going to the nightclub The Edge with the mayor of Southampton at the time.
Amazing.
It's something that my friendship group still refer to now, like 3 or 4 years on, and I don't think I ever would have met that mayor of Southampton if it wasn't for being a sabbatical officer.
Yeah.
So
how did that even come about?
There was magic in the air, and you know, memories were there to be made, and
the mayor agreed with you.
Yeah, well, I think it helped that the president at the time, Bios, was very good friends with the mayor, and yeah, that was a fun memory.
Amazing.
And I think also just like I'm really happy and proud of the fact that like it looked more positive when I left. It felt like I'd set up the Students' Union from an engagement point of view to keep growing its engagement where it had sort of plateaued for a long time. And from my understanding, it has done that. And so I'm really proud of that, and I'm really proud of the fact that I helped make that happen, but I'm really happy that, you know, I worked with a team that helped make that happen.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for, you know, the people that helped me achieve it, definitely.
What advice would you have for students considering running for a Sabb position?
What advice would I give? I think for me, my advice would be the prospect of being a Sabb is probably incredibly daunting to someone that's like not majorly involved in volunteering or societies or being a course rep or whatever. And so I think my advice wouldn't necessarily be for considering running for a Sabb. I think it would be considering getting more involved.
Yeah.
Because my uni experience was defined by how much I got involved with societies and students' unions and becoming a Sabb. And, you know, sure, that's been beneficial to me from like a career point of view, but like the personal journey I've been on as a result of opening myself up to the challenges and the opportunities and the experience of running a society and being a sabbatical officer has been really, really incredible. I think there have been really like key people in my life that I've met over the years that have like really helped take me and push me to be who I am now. And I wouldn't have met those people if it wasn't for being a Sabb or getting involved in, you know, if I just sort of sat and peacefully done my film and TV course. I don't know where I would be from a career perspective now. So my advice I'd feel pretty confident would be open yourself up to those opportunities and do it with baby steps. You know, it is a confidence thing. And I think if you do allow yourself to do it, you can really change yourself and your experiences at university.
Yeah, I'd say be more of a listener than you think you need to be. You know, with a Sabb position where you were so recently a student, students are often empowered to come and talk to you and come and sort of like tell you their grievances. And when we're Sabbs, we get the insider knowledge on sort of like why certain things can't happen. It may well become a case of you haven't thought of a way of doing something. It might seem like a sort of more convoluted way than you had ever imagined, but if it works, it works. And sort of being an active listener and then kind of having a try everything at least once mentality.
For someone debating being a Sabb and also anyone debating being more involved is like, try your best to not take on the weight of responsibility or the weight of the world, because like where you are so young at university and there is so much life ahead of you, you probably don't have the appropriate coping mechanisms or like capacity to really know the best way to tackle those things. And I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of taking on that weight too strongly. I know it's definitely something I did. And I think if you are debating being a sabbatical officer, there's definitely an element of like encouraging yourself to be kind to yourself about it, because like it's amazing that you have all this power to change the university, but it's not your solo responsibility to make it happen.
Yeah, you got a whole team behind you.
You've got a whole team to make it happen. And actually,
remembering that, and like the team is there year on year, but the Sabb sort of change.
Well, like
every
the
1 or
current
2 years.
CEO's been at the Students Union for at least 65 years, maybe. So like he knows what happens. He knows what happens. But I think that's definitely something that I wish I knew better at the time. I wish I knew that no one is putting that pressure on me apart from myself, because it was something that definitely impacted me way after being a sabbatical officer, and it's stuff I'm still trying to work out myself today. And actually, if I had known to just like appreciate the fact that I'd got like 1 or 2 wins, I didn't need to keep pushing aggressively for more, I'd have been a lot happier at the time.
I think just remembering to ask the team for help. As well.
Well, that just applies in general, though, right?
Fully.
This is now a mental health podcast.
I don't know about you, but I'm sort of a generally quite sort of like stubborn person.
Sure.
And
I remember at the time.
And if I can't figure something out on my own, I'll like lament on it and weigh on it until I've figured it out, and I find it very difficult to sort of reach out and ask for help. So yeah, I'd say remembering that you have the ability to ask the team for help, and also the team have infrastructures in place to give you that space. It's not entirely you going to them asking for help. There'll be regular check-ins. There'll be sort of, we used to have, what was it, heads up or something? On a Monday morning, we all used to sort of stand up, thank you.
Stand up.
We all used to stand in a circle and just sort of like read everyone into what we were doing that week. And I found that really helpful.
When I'd already announced I was leaving when the union awards happened, and I'd become such good friends with the catering team because they were absolute legends, and they named a shot after me.
I remember that.
I think it was called like the Humvee bomb or something.
Yeah.
So one of these things at the beginning said, "What's your favourite drink?" And the answer is whatever the drink that was named after me was called. Sure. That's my answer.
Kind of sad. I don't think I ever got a drink named.
No, you got to be the fun Sabb, and I got
to be the fun Sabb.
That shows the difference in how we approach things. Nice. Yeah.
It's fine. Wonderful. Completed it, mate.